Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. So today I wanted to show you how to make one of my favorite comfort food dishes, eggplant parmesan. Now this recipe is going to be for baked eggplant parmesan, not fried, the way that you may be used to it. This eggplant we're going to bake in the oven. Now this whole conversation started one afternoon between my dad and I, who was telling me that in his Italian household growing up, his mother never breaded the eggplant. So that of course prompted a call to my Aunt Nancy, my dad's sister, and then we had a conversation about it and she gave me all kinds of tips about how they used to serve it. And funny enough, she was saying they would take the eggplant and actually slice it lengthwise instead of into rounds, which is how we're used to doing it. And they would serve it in a pie plate for a first course. So I thought that sounded really lovely. But with my modern American lifestyle, we typically don't do first and second courses for weeknight meals. I don't know if you guys do, but I was just gonna adapt it a little bit just for the way my family likes it. And hopefully your family will too. All right, so let me show you what we're gonna do. So you certainly can slice your eggplant with a chef's knife. I'm just using my mandolin because I don't have the best knife skills. And I can't get that exacting. And I like all of my eggplant to be the same exact thickness because that's going to help them cook at the same rate. I think it's better that the eggplant is thinner than thicker because it won't be as fibrous, and I just find it's easier to eat that way. It kind of melts in your mouth. All right, so we are gonna cut off the top of the eggplant here. And if you're using a mandolin, I would also cut the eggplant in half. It'll just be easier to put on your little top this way. I love this style of mandolin. I'll put a link in my description for who makes it. It's a really great model. It's very sturdy and lots of great safety features. So don't be intimidated by it. Going to give it a slice. There. These slices don't need to be perfect because it's going to get covered with sauce and cheese, but just to give you an idea, it should be like this thickness, just like that. And then you can place it on 2 baking sheets that are lined with parchment paper. The parchment paper will help prevent the eggplant from sticking onto the actual metal of the pan. You get a lot of differing opinions about, do you salt the eggplant and let it sit for an hour or two to drain the liquid out of it? I don't know. I had a nice conversation with my Aunt Nancy about it and we both agreed we didn't really see a difference. So you do you if you want to drain it, but I don't know. I find that if there is any moisture in it, it's just gonna add to the sauce and make it maybe not as dry. But I don't know, I think cut thinly like this, you really don't notice it, so. I do like to cut them into rounds instead of lengthwise like my grandmother did, only because I find that it lays better on the casserole with the cheese, because the cheese is round. But you could cut it lengthwise if you wanted to. And then the next thing you wanna do is just brush each one with a little bit of olive oil. I only do one side, but if you wanted to flip both sides, you could. I just think this is so much easier and quicker than frying each piece of eggplant in the pan. I did try that because that's what my Aunt Nancy said my grandmother used to do, but I found that it just soaked up a lot of oil that way, and doing it this way, they seem to not have as much oil, even though it looks like I'm putting a ton of oil on it. I think it like absorbed it more in the pan, but if you wanted to do it that way, you could. Okay, then we're gonna place our eggplant in a 450-degree Fahrenheit oven for just about 20 minutes. Okay. While the eggplant's in the oven, you can get to work on making your tomato sauce. And this is just a really simple, basic recipe. All we're gonna do is take just 30 ounces of store-bought tomato puree going into the pot. I like to take the time to just flavor tomato puree rather than buy the sauce in a jar, because that way you can control the salt and the seasoning. And the garlic. Very important. And then I'm gonna use 2 garlic cloves. If you're not a fan, you could just get away with 1, that's good. Then we'll also use a teaspoon of Italian seasoning. If you don't have Italian seasoning, you could just use maybe half a teaspoon of basil and half a teaspoon of oregano. That would be great. So we'll give this a stir, and then I'm just gonna add some salt and pepper to taste. I usually do 1 or 2 big pinches. I usually don't put too much salt just because the Parmesan cheese is pretty salty. And freshly cracked pepper. That's all you have to do. It's basically done. I like to let it simmer for about 15 to 20 minutes just to bring the acidity down of the tomato puree, but really it's good to go after that. Now, the moment we've all been waiting for, the assembly. So I have a 9x12 gratin pan here. You wanna get something that's sort of low and shallow so that you can spread the eggplant out. It will just allow for everybody to get enough cheese and the crispy parts on top. You want to do 1 ladle of the sauce in the bottom of your pan. That will also prevent the eggplant from sticking to your pan. Sort of acts as a little buffer. And then I use the bigger eggplants, you know, because the eggplant is such an oblong shape. When you start to cut it, you'll get the bottom pieces to be bigger than the top pieces. So start with your bottom pieces. And we're just going to create a nice layer all along the bottom. Then you're going to do about a 1/4 cup of freshly grated Parmesan cheese on the bottom, and that's going to give us a lot of flavor. And because I'm serving this as a main course and not a first course, I am gonna add a little bit more cheese in the form of some mozzarella, just to give it a little bit more protein and make it a little bit more filling. So you can do a layer of mozzarella, just making sure the whole thing is covered, and that way everybody will get a little bit. And then I also like to add some fresh basil. So you can just take fresh basil leaves that you can buy at the grocery store, or if you're growing them, that's great. These are my first harvest from my garden. In fact, if you want to keep up with my gardening updates, the best thing to do is follow me on Instagram. I'm just at Entertaining with Beth, and I post all of my updates now on Instagram, usually in the stories as little videos or sometimes in the feed. It's just easier than trying to keep up to date with another YouTube channel with the editing and the shooting, and because the garden's constantly changing. So Instagram seems to be an easier place for that. And then you're gonna do another layer of eggplant just on top of that. You can see how thin it is. And I think that thinly sliced eggplant also allows it to not feel as heavy. And you saw how many we were able to bake just in the oven. This would have taken forever if I had to fry each one in a skillet. Then you want to add another ladle of sauce, and then another layer of cheese. And sometimes at this point, I kind of cut it a little bit and maybe don't add as much cheese just because we did like a full layer below. There you go. I don't actually think it matters what order you do Parmesan and mozzarella. I think I just switched it up this time. It's all gonna be good. All right, and then a little bit more basil. This is the kind of dinner I make when my kids have like activities at night and they're running around and they need to have dinner before something starts. I will just whip this up because it's super easy and super quick, and they can also eat it really fast. Then you can take whatever you have left over as far as the eggplant is concerned and pop that on top. And then we're just gonna put the remainder of our sauce on top. And if you need to spread it around, the bottom of your ladle works great for like a big giant spoon. There. Then for a little bit of gluttony, we are gonna add some mozzarella cheese. Like maybe, I don't know, quarter or a third of a cup, just so that it gets nice and sort of toasty and bubbly on top. It just makes it even more delicious. So now we're gonna place this in a 400 degrees Fahrenheit oven, so make sure you reduce it from 450, which is what we use to cook the eggplant. And you're basically just looking for the cheese to melt and the tomato sauce to be warmed through. So about 15 to 20 minutes. And then I also like to pop it under the broiler for about a minute or so, just to kind of get that mozzarella cheese on top nice and bubbly and toasty. And these pair beautifully with my little garlic knots. So you can click the YouTube short here and see how you make those. If you'd like to be alerted to when my new videos post, you can sign up for my newsletter. The link is below, and that way it'll come right to your inbox. All right, you guys, I'll see you back here next time. Until then, bye.